One of the highlights for me of this school year was the time I spent reading in our third and fourth grade classroom, reading selections from the great and hilarious book, Don Quixote. It was written and set in the 16th century in Spain. It was about a man who read and reread hundreds of books on chivalry and knights errant, men who traversed the world righting wrongs. This man became so saturated in stories about knights that he began to believe he was one. One of the first things that he did was to rename himself, calling himself Don Quixote of La Mancha. Don, a noble title, was not his by right, but he assumed it. He gave himself that, as well as the name Quixote, which he liked the sound of, but means something like cheesy fatso. Sir Cheesy Fatso of La Mancha. La Mancha sounds like a great kingdom, but it's more like saying Sir Cheesy Fatso from the great kingdom of Opi, Libo. He renamed himself, as well as his worn-out horse that he thought was the best in the world. And since all knights have a lady, a damsel, so he decided he too should have a damsel. And he chose a woman he had never spoken to and renamed her as well, Dulcinea, his sweet one. And then he constructed ugly and ineffective armor, something that I would probably create, after which he set off. But soon he became sad because he realized he hadn't actually been dubbed a knight yet. However, he came across an inn, which he imagined to be a castle, prostitutes that he took for noble women, and the innkeeper, which he thought was a castellan and capable of making him a knight. Soon afterwards, Don Quixote drafted his neighbor, Sancho Panza, drafted him to be a squire, promising a share in all his conquests. One of his earliest and best-known adventures was that of the windmills. Sancho on his mule, Don Quixote on Rocinante, his horse, began to journey. And from a distance, Don Quixote looks and sees there are giants. And Sancho says, "What giants?" "Those giants. There must be 30 or so." And Sancho says, "Those aren't giants. Those are windmills." And Don Quixote said, "You know very little. If you're afraid, I will not be." And he charges with this lance towards the windmills, and they begin to move. And he said, "Even if you have multiple arms, I shall be victorious." And as he nears one of the windmills and plunges his lance into the sail, the wind catches it and lifts him up and Rocinante up, and they both fall on their backs, nearly with broken backs. His squire, Sancho, ran to him as he was lying on the ground and said, "Didn't I tell you these were windmills?" And Don Quixote said, "Matters of war are subject to continual change. Moreover, I think, and therefore it is true, that a magician has turned the giants into windmills in order to deprive me of the glory of defeating them." It's a hilarious story. It's a hilarious book. It's lots of fun. It's widely considered the first modern novel for literary reasons, but also philosophical reasons, which I'm more interested in. We heard it just now. Don Quixote saying, "I think, and therefore it is true." It anticipates the French philosopher Descartes, who, in trying to find a way to prove that he actually exists, came up with his famous saying, "I think, therefore I am." The movement is to begin not with what a thing is, what reality is in itself, its nature, its being, but to begin with the mind, with what I think, my ideas, and therefore that's the way things are. A present-day example of this appeared in our Lenten book on parenting in the section on the fragility of children. Children oftentimes these days are not allowed to fail. They believe that they are the best in whatever area they choose. "I think I'm the best, therefore I'm the best." And then when reality is confronted, they're crushed. They've been living in their minds and their ideas without regard for reality. I think, and therefore it is true. I think love is this, and therefore it is this. I think marriage is this, and therefore it is this. I think I am this, I define who I am, and so I am. For some, it's, I think the coronavirus is a hoax, and therefore it is true. You have your morality, I have mine. You have reality, I have mine, to each his own. Perhaps we could characterize it in this way. For the ancients, for our ancient ancestors, when life gave them lemons, they would say, it's time to make lemonade. For us moderns, when life gives us lemons, we say something like, I am modern. I call thee lemons no more. Henceforth, thou shalt be tomatoes. And then we're disappointed when our tomato soup tastes kind of strange. This is a long and imaginative way around to the theme, or to a theme, I'm beginning to see emerge when the change is brought about by the coronavirus, especially in terms of the disruption of our plans and preferences. I begin to hear, to see this theme. Senior activities, for example, no prom, no graduation, no sporting events. Also in terms of the restrictions imposed on us by the stay-at-home order, we're not able to do the activities we enjoy, or see the people we want to see, or move about freely. It's understandably frustrating and disappointing, but when sadness gets a grip on us, and lethargy, despondency, or even despair, something of our modern mindset becomes apparent. For we have a deeply instilled mental habit of taking our ideas, our thoughts, as the starting place or the reference point, which regularly leads to disappointment, sadness, and chaos, not unlike Don Quixote. Here's an alternative taken from Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, the Jewish survivor of multiple concentration camps during World War II, whom I mentioned on Ash Wednesday. Listen closely. This really can change your life. He wrote afterwards, any attempt to restore a man's inner strength in the camp had first to succeed in showing him some future goal. Nietzsche's words, he who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how, could be the guiding motto for all psychotherapeutic efforts regarding prisoners. Whenever there was an opportunity for it, one had to give them a why, an aim for their lives, in order to strengthen them to bear the terrible how of their existence. Woe to him who saw no more sense in his life, no aim, no purpose, and therefore no point in carrying on. He was soon lost. The typical reply with which such a man rejected all encouraging arguments was, I have nothing to expect from life anymore. What sort of answer can one give to that? What was really needed was a fundamental change in our attitude toward life. We had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing men that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. We needed to stop asking about the meaning of life and instead to think of ourselves as those who are being questioned by life, daily and hourly. Our answer must consist not in talk and meditation, but in right action and in right conduct. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the task which it constantly sets for each individual. These tasks, and therefore the meaning of life, differ from man to man and from moment to moment. They form man's destiny, which is different and unique for each individual. No man and no destiny can be compared with any other man or any other destiny. No situation repeats itself. and each situation calls for a different response. Sometimes the situation in which a man finds himself may require him to shape his own fate by action. At other times, it is more advantageous for him to make use of an opportunity for contemplation and to realize assets in this way. Sometimes man may be required simply to accept fate, to bear his cross. When a man finds that it is his destiny to suffer, he will have to accept his suffering as his task, his single and unique task. His unique opportunity lies in the way in which he bears his burden. For us as prisoners, these thoughts were not speculations far removed from reality. They were the only thoughts that could be of help to us. They kept us from despair, even when there seemed to be no chance of coming out of it alive. Once the meaning of suffering had been revealed to us, we refused to minimize or alleviate the camp's tortures by ignoring them or harboring false illusions and entertaining artificial optimism. Suffering had become a task on which we did not want to turn our backs. We had realized its hidden opportunities for achievement. Therefore, it was necessary to face up to the full amount of suffering, trying to keep moments of weakness and furtive tears to a minimum. But there was no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bore witness that a man had the greatest of courage, the courage to suffer. Only a very few realized that. We had to learn ourselves that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. Friends, on this Passion Sunday, begin with the fact, with reality. It is God's providence, and He is good. Don't begin with, how could God do this? For you're bringing your ideas, defining reality by your thoughts. A little like Zechariah did. How can my wife, who is so old, become pregnant? As opposed to Mary, who trusted and believed. The fact of the Passion suggests the dire situation man is in, and it suggests in Jesus Christ that God can be trusted even when He doesn't appear to respond and has forsaken us. My God, why have you forsaken me? Christ's words are a quotation of Psalm 22. Traditionally, to quote the first line of the psalm means to quote the entire psalm, which contains, as it goes along, this experience of abandonment, but ends in complete confidence and trust in God. Don't miss any opportunity for real achievement during this time. Be on your guard against any temptations of feeling sorry for yourself or dwelling on what's been lost. Don't lose sight of the why, which is held up on the cross this day in a special way.